What he just said will have Steelers fans fired up. Pittsburgh Steelers have added a new addition to their defense this offseason, and he has spoken his mind on the strong safety position. My name is Peyton Kleppe, and on today's episode of Steelers Digest, we'll be breaking down the latest Pittsburgh Steelers reports and analysis regarding the Pittsburgh Steelers football team. If you guys are not already currently subscribed to the channel, just click that subscribe button down below. We are trying to get to 3,000 subscribers. Steelers have added a new player at that strong safety position this offseason. The guy I'm talking about is Juan Thornhill. You know, this guy is I believe, 1 or 2 time Super Bowl champion with the Kansas City Chiefs. He was drafted, I believe, back in 2017 or 2018. And he did play pretty well for the Chiefs initially when he was, a rookie and young in the league. But, things happen. You change teams, and unfortunately, he did get sent to the Cleveland Clowns after winning 1 or 2 Super Bowls in Kansas City. And, he did have a few down years there, but he was still a starter. And now he is, I believe, 28 or 29. So he is a veteran presence that, he has seen the highs of Kansas City and he has seen the lows of the Cleveland Browns. So I bet this guy has a lot, a lot of experience to talk about, a lot of different experiences that he personally had to go through, just to become the man and player he has, been molded into in the National Football League. But, he did have a tough time in Cleveland. Obviously, the Cleveland Browns are not really successful. They really have not had much success since having Baker Mayfield a few years ago, who really did revitalize their franchise. But, other than that, they have a few spots on their defense, a few spots on their offense that, they did get rid of this offseason. And I think the only guy still remaining on their team on offense that, is a potential threat is a guy like Jerry Jeudy, who had, a 200-yard game against his former team, the Broncos, and, began to heat up in that second half of the season. But other than that, they got rid of Nick Chubb. They made a dumb move in signing Deshaun Watson, a guy who, obviously has had his off-the-field issues and hasn't played well on the field. They owe him a ton of guaranteed money. They kind of put themselves in a hole. They're dealing with 2 guys who are also dealing with off-the-field issues with Devin Bush and, Quinshon Judkins. But, other than that, obviously the Cleveland Browns are still the Cleveland Browns, still a mess of a franchise, and Juan Thornhill made the right decision and got out of there, got out of Cleveland. But, in an article by Andrew Vasquez, he does go into detail about what Juan Thornhill did have to say to reporters and critics today who, maybe would be doubting him, because obviously after we did trade away Minkah Fitzpatrick, a guy who's, a star name in the NFL, a guy who's had all pro seasons, Pro Bowl seasons, had, very statistical seasons where you're looking at it and saying, whoa, that dude's definitely elite, coming off seasons where he had 6 interceptions, 5 interceptions. But unfortunately, the last couple years, Minkah really did not have a lot of splash plays, did not have a lot of success, and the pay grade we were giving him really wasn't worth it to the Steelers at the moment. We did have to pay a guy like TJ Watt, who has been more productive. So we did, unfortunately, send Minkah back to Miami, where he was drafted. And, we got in return guys like Jalen Ramsey and Jonnu Smith. But this was a huge trade for the Steelers. Minkah Fitzpatrick was a guy who was the defensive captain, was a vocal leader on our team. But unfortunately, nothing lasts forever. And, Minkah Fitzpatrick had to be dealt in order to pay TJ Watt and, free up some space among the roster to pay other guys like DK Metcalf, Jonnu Smith, who we traded Minkah for, Jalen Ramsey, another guy who we had to pay, who might even see some time at that safety position, probably primarily at corner. But, he also may see some time at that safety position depending on how the Pittsburgh Steelers do decide to use him. But, in Andrew Vasquez's article, he does go into detail. Steelers training camp did officially start today. The season has officially begun. I'm ready. I know you guys are too. But, sadly, this is without his fan favorite safety, Minkah Fitzpatrick, who, like I said, was traded to the Dolphins almost 1 month ago. And, several analysts did point to a lack of splash plays that Minkah did he wasn't making these plays, and there was a narrative that he was on a decline. But Juan Thornhill doesn't really believe in that narrative. He did stand up for former Steeler Minkah Fitzpatrick. He did say that, Minkah is still a great player. He said this to the reporters on Wednesday. If you have a great guy back there that can make a lot of plays on the ball in that deep third, teams are really not going to want to try you back there. So that's why a guy like Minkah, they do say struggled a bit, but he didn't struggle. You just can't get interceptions when the ball is not coming your way. So Minkah Fitzpatrick was a guy that, he's a big name guy. Teams like to stay away from him. Obviously due to that early success that he did have in Pittsburgh, when we did initially trade for him in, I believe it was 2019 or 2018. We did send a first-round pick over to the Miami Dolphins after Ben Roethlisberger did get hurt. We needed some assurance at that safety position, so we did make a trade for him. But once he did get here initially, he kind of dug himself a deep hole as he was making a ton of splash plays early, was making a ton of touchdowns, fumble recoveries, pick sixes, everything you'd want in your safety. This guy was doing it, but, this kind of digs yourself a hole because then, players and fans and organizations are expecting more out of you. They're expecting you to constantly produce, constantly put up seasons where you're making, these crazy splash plays, crazy plays on the football. But unfortunately, that's just not how it goes in the NFL. Most guys, they really can't keep a consistent, takeaway stretch. And obviously that did happen to Minkah. Teams just really weren't throwing to him. They were staying away from him, taking advantage of other parts of the field, our inside linebacker core. Other than last year, who, we are starting to develop, but, the past couple years, our inside linebacker core really wasn't too strong. So teams were taking advantage of that middle of the field, throwing a lot of slant stuff like that, play action, all stuff like that. They were taking advantage of more of that and staying away from Minkah. But, in the past couple years, Minkah only did have 1 interceptions in the past 2 years since we did sign him. So this was tough for the Steelers to kind of justify to pay him and keep him on the roster. So that is why ultimately the Pittsburgh Steelers did unfortunately send him back to Miami, where he really did not want to play initially. But, we did bring in a guy like Juan Thornhill, who is a veteran, who's seen it all. He's seen the highs of the NFL, and he's seen the lows. So if this guy's got any experience, any knowledge about football, he's gonna show his teammates. He's gonna help everybody out. And I do think this guy could be a low-key breakout candidate for this year. Obviously, he's coming off some down seasons with the Browns, but, he's coming into a team where he doesn't have to be that star player. He doesn't have to be, have like 4 or 5 picks on a season. He's got a lot of great Hall of Fame players around him. But he's just got to do his job, show up, work, use that veteran experience, and, help us try to get that 7th Lombardi trophy. Unfortunately, that is all I have for you guys tonight on Steelers Digest. If you guys are not already currently subscribed to the channel, click that subscribe button down below. Thank you so much. Here we go, Steelers.